And thanks to all of you. Thanks for the opportunity to share a couple of brief thoughts. I first saw Yitzhak Rabin on September 13th, 1993. It was in Washington, D.C., at the Rose Garden at the White House lawn. I was a junior attorney at a firm called Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen & Katz in New York. And one of my mentors at the firm, Bernie Nussbaum, was appointed by President Clinton to be his first White House counsel. And Bernie managed to secure one of these, way in the back kind of spots for me. And I flew down to Washington. I thought it was a big deal. And there was rampant media speculation the day before the event, whether Prime Minister Rabin himself would show up, or whether, he would let Shimon Peres, his erstwhile political rival, but now real political partner, do the honors instead of if Rabin showed up. Then people wondered whether or not Rabin would actually shake Arafat's hand. Rabin shook his hand. But he did so in a way that only Yitzhak Rabin could. And no actor could have pulled this off because it was so real. For those of us who remember, it was probably the most famous handshake of all time. His face expressed this combination of disgust but forbearance, anxiety and hope. Revulsion, but also the recognition that you don't make peace with your friends, but rather with your sworn adversaries. And Arafat qualified. Rabin did not like Arafat. And he knew that Arafat hated him, and hated his children, and hated his grandchildren, and hated everybody that stood in the way of global jihad based on terror. But Rabin loved Israel. And he loved Israel enough so that he realized that he was elected to take a chance so that his children and his grandchildren would be able to have a chance to give peace a chance. The first time I actually met Yitzhak Rabin was also in Washington about 18 months later at the annual APAC conference. And he spoke on stage with President Clinton. This was after the peace treaty with Jordan. It was an amazing celebration, probably one of the most unforgettable moments in my life. As we all know, President Clinton is an incredible speaker with an amazing resume, Yale Law School, Rhodes Scholar, one of the youngest attorneys general and governors in American history, and now President of the United States. Yitzhak Rabin never went to college. I mean, he went to an agricultural high school, but he had a pretty formidable resume himself. He joined the Haganah as an 18-year-old. At the age of 26, he led the Harel Brigade, which actually rescued Jerusalem by breaking open a corridor. He then served as Ramatkal, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who basically led the battle of the Six-Day War and the reunification of his birth city. And at APAC, he was a rock star. He really was. And afterwards, he spent about 10 or 15 minutes with about 20 young leaders, the group that I qualified for at the time. And then we had a chance to say something one-on-one. And I planned already then to move to Israel literally within a couple of days, and I wanted to impress him, so maybe I was nervous if I stammered in flawed Hebrew, Ani Odeh La'aretz B'od Kama Shanim. So I said years instead of days, and he gave me that look in perfect Hebrew, Nehedal, which meant, I think, if I had a nickel for every bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Zionist wannabe who tells me that he intends to move to Israel in a couple of years, I wouldn't really need this high-paying job. But anyway, I wound up in Israel, and I wound up working for Core Industries, which at the time was a huge conglomerate. It represented about 7% of Israel's industrial economy. It employed over 35,000 people. Its president and CEO was a gentleman named Benny Golan. I was his assistant. And he was one of the captains of industry that Rabin would invite periodically to have a corporate cabinet, usually at his home in Ramat Aviv on Saturday mornings. On one such occasion, during the summer of 1995, Benny invited me to go with him. I don't know if he recognized me or not, but I reminded him that there was this little brief interaction in Washington. But I don't think he really understood the interstices of the capital markets and what we were doing, but he was very happy that this corporate behemoth, this unwieldy company that nearly went bankrupt 5 years earlier, was preparing an IPO to raise $120 million from international investors for an Israeli conglomerate, and that 35,000 workers would be better off afterwards than they were before. And he emphasized to anybody who would listen how important it was to build these corporate partnerships to peace. The World Economic Forum organized these MENA, Middle Eastern North African conferences periodically. They stopped unfortunately in the late 90s. But in 1995, this conference was held in Amman, Jordan, and Rabin thought it was very important for us to delay our IPO by a week to attend this conference, and we did. And I was in a room with Prime Minister Rabin, Eitan Haber, who you saw read his death announcement, you'll hear from him in a few minutes, Benny Gohan, King Hussein, some of King Hussein's business partners, and I was thrilled. I was thrilled to be there. I was thrilled to be meeting Jordanian business people. I felt like I was so fortunate to be, the pioneers may have felt in the 20s and 30s when they were dredging the swamps, to now do something relevant and based on some experience that I had before making Aliyah. And then I was really fortunate to spend part of the next 6 years implementing some of those initiatives. Prime Minister Rabin was not as fortunate. Less than 2 weeks after that conference in Amman, Jordan, on November 4th, he was assassinated. He never lived to see, obviously, our IPO or other manifestations of the peace treaty or any of the other things that he worked so hard for. I don't know, nobody knows, if the peace process would have turned out any differently had Prime Minister Rabin lived. But I can tell you with confidence that if we ever get to experience, or we're fortunate enough to benefit from the purpose of his final mission, it will be because of the biggest risk he ever took, the most profound investment he ever made, and one which he paid for with his life. I think President Clinton's eulogy was the most memorable, and it ended with 2 words that served as a mantra for a nation desperately in need of healing. It served as a remedy that was a bumper sticker on nearly every car and adorned nearly every window in the state for years. Shalom Chaver. Goodbye, my friend. All I can add is Todah. Todah Rabah.